Hi, I'm here today with Pamela Garfield-Jaeger, and we met this weekend at the GenSpect conference in Denver and I had a really great time talking with you and have been looking forward to having a chance to connect further with you. And we were having a discussion about something specific, so it seemed like a good time to maybe just hop on and do at least a brief chat about the topic at hand. But first, before we get going, would you mind just giving your background, just introduce yourself to people who may not be familiar with you?
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker in California. I've been licensed here since 2005. I have lots of experience, mostly working with teens and families in school settings and in group homes. And I actually started my career in New York and in the inner city doing home visits. So I just have a vast amount of experience, usually mostly in the mental health field. I had to take a little break from my profession in the year 2017 because I had a physical problem, a physical disability. And then when I came back in 2021, like everything was completely different. And I chose not to get the COVID vaccine because I have health issues and I wasn't comfortable taking it. And because of that, had to leave my job, and that kind of emboldened me to become a little more outspoken about all of the problems in the mental health field, from the CRT and the victim mentality and masking and group therapy, and then of course all of the gender issues that we've been talking about and that we've met on. So
Wow.
that's my
So
story.
so you really noticed a big change in those few years of being outside of the field.
Yeah, I think what happened was the change was so drastic, but then once I kind of woke up to it, then I, in hindsight, look back at some other things and realized, that the seeds were planted long before those 4 years. So I'm actually in this Epic Times movie called Gender Transformation, and I'm there admitting the fact that I was part of this secret LGBT group, and I screened the kids to go to this secret group, and I feel horribly ashamed for it. But I'm talking out about it now because now I know it's wrong. I thought at the time, oh, we were just helping kids figure themselves out without adult interference. Of course, now I see it very differently, that it was a way to kind of groom kids. Of
Mhm.
course, at the time, this was in 2016, trans really wasn't so big. There's one trans kid in the whole high school, and she wasn't even in that group. So it wasn't about that at the time. But of course, I see it as the seeds were planted for what they're doing now. And in fact, I just talked to a reporter about this school and the program because now they're hosting some Zoom program for 13 to 25-year-olds for kids to attend without their parental knowledge. So, it just went from one place which was not good to another place which is really bad. So that's what I've noticed.
Wow, that's 13 to 25. What a spread of age to not have your
Yeah.
13, not know that your 13-year-old is in a group with 25-year-olds.
Yeah, it's creepy. And that's what the
Yeah.
Trevor Project is doing too, if people aren't aware. If you go on that website, there's several chat groups with people who knows whether these kids are really talking to. And I think don't
Mhm.
all have good intentions.
Wow, that's really concerning. And it's interesting how you describe your own path through that. Like you were involved in this and now you've come to see it very differently.
Yeah, I really related to that aspect of Jamie Reed's speech because
Hmm.
she talked about the road to hell being paved with good
Good intention.
intentions. And I certainly agree. And I mean, I was a part of paving that road.
Hmm.
And so I guess I'm trying to repent for my sins.
Well, I can only imagine what it was like for you to lose your job over the vaccine requirement. But has that, how do you feel about that on balance? The way you talk about being able to talk about these topics now, do you feel freer without the constraint of that, or how has that played out in your life on balance?
Yeah, so what happened was I had this disability where I really can't work a full-time job. I was at a job where I honestly was very overqualified for.
Hmm.
I was just happy to be sort of in society after being disabled and then going through the lockdowns.
Hmm.
So I really had less to lose. So when they were enforcing those rules, and honestly, when they were enforcing all of these COVID restrictions that I didn't agree with, especially in a mental health setting, it was easy for me to let that job go because
Hmm.
I'm lucky I'm in a position that I didn't need the job, but I really wanted the job. I wanted to be in society and be working after everything.
Mhm.
So I guess I decided to join society in this alternate way by being public and, helping other therapists that don't, are not in the same position as me, that need to feed their families and, have to work a full-time job. I just, honestly, I can't. And I actually get some disability for it. So I'm really
Mhm.
lucky.
Well, good. I'm glad you feel like you've been able to be involved in a way that feels good to you despite the setback. And I feel like a lot of people who have sort of struggled with whether or not to speak out on these ideological issues based on job security concerns, after they go ahead and do it, even if it results in job loss, I what I hear is there's a lot of freedom in at least being able to speak your mind, finding a new place, finding a new job, finding a new social group, whatever that might be.
Yeah, oh, it feels really good to live your authentic self. It just feels good to have integrity and not go against your values
Mhm.
just for a paycheck or just for security. Um, I mean, I'll admit I'm lucky that I was able to take that risk, but I understand not everyone can, but it does feel really good. And
Mhm.
if you, find your people, and this conference was a great example of that, finding you and talking to you, we had a really strong conversation just about how, disheartening it was to be around people in our field that just, I guess, don't get it, don't realize what they're doing. A lot of them are brainwashed, I guess. Some of them I do think they know what they're doing, that I think some of the leaders know.
Mhm.
But I think most of the kind of layman's therapists, they just think they're doing the right thing. And it's tough. And they won't listen to you.
Yeah, I agree. And that's been my perspective on it as well. And it's something that's interesting. The thing that we were chatting about that brought us to have this conversation today is this issue that kind of reveals that same process of thinking on both sides to some extent. So you think of there being sides and the polarity, and there's this rigidity of thinking that I think has been revealed a little bit through an issue that came up post conference.
Yeah.
And so I guess people are referring to it a little bit as AGP gate.
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny, but I'll just preface this by saying that so I did a really brief live stream that right after the second day of the conference. And I had been planning on doing a live stream with Jessie Ministo. We've talked before. I interviewed her on this channel. She's a friend, and I was really excited to see her in person at the conference. We talked about connecting and doing either a live stream or a recording at the conference, and she had to leave early the next day, so our only chance was that afternoon. And we ended up having some technical issue, and so we tried to do it from my phone, and it was a total experiment, but we thought we'll just give it a try. And so we recorded a live stream. It wasn't working out. We just tried to handle it really graciously. We couldn't really see ourselves, and it was Jessie and myself and Julia Malott. Julia
Okay.
Malott is a Canadian trans woman and also a friend of mine, also someone I met through this process. And I let this thing just stay up for a little while. I ended up taking it down because it was just sloppy. But in the in the meantime, I got several really negative comments, and I wasn't sure what it was about. At first, I thought I was being criticized for a sloppy live stream, which would have been fine. That made sense. And then when I inquired and I got my response, it was because I was sitting with a trans woman.
Yeah.
That was the response that I was getting. It was like, you're basically you're a sellout, and your position means nothing. Look what you're doing. You're sitting with a trans woman. And I thought that was really interesting because I personally, this is just on a personal note, but I've never presented myself as having an extreme position on that.
Mhm.
I guess I have a very firm position on that when it comes to children, but when it comes to adults, I there's a lot of room for people to be themselves and me to still accept them as a friend or a client or a colleague or whatever. I'm not So I was really surprised by
Mhm.
that presumption by people who have been following the channel for a long time and have been really supportive.
Now that I've been in this space a while, that doesn't surprise me at all, actually. But it would have surprised me maybe a year or two ago. Um, and my position, just to share, has actually shifted.
Okay.
So I guess I've come more, I'm not anti the people who are trans, but I am
Mhm.
anti the process. I'm anti I just don't think it's a good choice for people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I meet a trans person, I'm not against that person because I see them as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
but I am privately believing that they are not making their best choice for themselves. And I'm also wondering what health issues that they're dealing with as a result, either currently or will be in the future, because I just think it's not a good choice. And then I do see there are some ramifications to society, which is complex. But at the same time, I don't have that vitriol that I know a lot of people have, especially women towards the men who are trans. But either way, so yeah, I mean, I've actually shifted because I used to be much more moderate on it, and I guess the more I learned about how bad it was for people
Mm-hmm.
psychologically and physically, I've moved on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in shaming anybody. I got a lot of hate because I actually was on Buck Angel's YouTube channel, and oh my God, I got so much hate.
Really?
I know that Buck is controversial because, you know, has that porn connection, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a whole other can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
But it was even just the trans piece, you know, I'm with a groomer and all this stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, I'm just talking to a person
Mm-hmm.
who was actually really nice to talk to. Do I agree with all of the decisions? I'm not sure. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that people should be spewing this kind of hate. I think it's unproductive.
Yeah, I think that the opinion and the way you express your opinion is really closely aligned to my own. It's not, I have a, I think that this is a question of medical ethics in terms of the
That's exactly
interventions
it.
that are being done to people's bodies. I think that medical science and cosmetic surgeons, endocrinologists who are supporting people in these procedures, I have a lot of questions about that because it seems like we're hurting people's bodies through, not we, but they are hurting people's bodies through offering these interventions. And yet I don't have a problem sitting with someone who has made certain choices in their lives. I think that there are so many different directions people can go in life that some of this comes back to the kind of temperament that you need in order to be a therapist or a counselor. You've
Yeah, I
got
think
to
we
have
have that. Yeah.
you have to have a pretty accepting um per, I guess foundational perspective on what choices individuals are going to make. And so like you said, you're not rejecting the individual in front of you. And are you even for me, I'm not even necessarily thinking in terms of judgment at all. I'm just listening to the choices, if somebody wants to share with me their story, then I'm there to listen to it, and I'm very curious about it. But on balance, socially, I think that it's pretty easy to say that this doesn't seem like a net positive, this medicalization that we're doing to
No, I
people.
don't think so. Even for anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and even if for people out there that believe in this, like true trans, or you know, for certain people it's the right thing. I have come to the conclusion that I don't think it's a good choice for anyone, and I think that there are people who feel uncomfortable in their bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and the best route would be to not go through the medicalization, not get surgeries and all that. Even though it might make them feel better in the short term, I think that it's not a good choice. I think it would, I guess, a last resort, but even still, I don't even think a last resort is great.
Yeah.
Um, and then so like we're both therapists, we have expertise in mental health, but when I'm in front of a person, or maybe I'm on their YouTube channel, or I'm talking to somebody at a conference, I'm not their therapist. It's not my
Right.
job to sit there and start telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I'm not there to figure out and help them find the best life choices for them in that moment. Like that, I just don't, you walk around, you're next to someone who's smoking. Like if you're that person that goes up to someone who's smoking, say, hey, my dad actually used to do this, you're going to get lung cancer, right? Like that doesn't go over very well. And
No,
we're not
you're
affirming the smoking, but we're
right.
not going up to them telling them they're going to get lung cancer. You don't do that. You just walk by and you say, well, I don't like smoking, but that's what this person's doing. And
Yeah, you're just kind of meeting them where they are at the moment.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you about the procedures and that it's actually doing harm to yourself. And then, but another issue comes up, and that's that whether or not we, however we feel about it, and however even socially people feel on overall, we're in a position now where a great number of people have been using these medical technologies.
Yeah,
There are going to be, even if there's some legislation or some other process, medical boards clamp down on these procedures and it stops tomorrow, we still have we have a generation of people who have been impacted by this, and we're going to be living in a world where people are presenting, we're going to run across people who have made these choices and who are going to be presenting in a gender variant way.
for sure.
And somehow we can't, it's just very interesting. I think this is what's coming up from the Twitter storm that ensued. And I guess for background, Jen Specht posted a photo of Laura Becker, who's a detransitioner, with Phil Illey, who is the author of a book called Auto-Heterosexual. And he's a tall man, and he's wearing a blue dress, and he's standing next to Laura. And so this was posted on Jen Specht's Twitter, and then it just like created a complete explosion.
It's still
of
going as we speak.
Is
Like
it
if you
really?
go on Twitter, you could just still scroll and see people just going off.
Yeah. Do you want to sum that up?
I don't know how to sum it up, but I
Yeah.
guess so. People believe that it's wrong to platform Phil, who is a self-identified autogynephilia. They feel that, I mean, we all are aware that that term means that when you're wearing women's clothing,
Mm-hmm.
there's something connected to like some kind of fetish. It's some kind of fetish behavior. So it was Kelly J. Keene that sort of started it. She retweeted it, and I don't remember the exact quote. Probably should have looked it up, but criticizing that Jen Specht was, and maybe she called it hypocritical. I don't know if I have the word. I don't want to get the exact words, but she was criticizing Jen Specht for having him there and for posting the picture of him, because that's against the values. It's against her values, obviously, and she would think, she assumes that would be against Jen Specht's values, which is in what Kelly J. Keene believes is about protecting women and vulnerable people. But then Stella actually responded by saying that's not what this conference is. This is not for vulnerable people. This is about non-medicalizing. This is about advocating for people to address their gender issues without medicalization. And that's what Jen Specht is. So, I mean, it sounds like the two women have like two little slightly different focuses on their, what they're doing. And so there was that clash. But although Kelly J. Keene's followers just really piled on, they felt like it was really offensive. Poor Laura was caught in the storm, criticizing her and said people were saying that meant she didn't care about women and children, that she was a hypocrite. And I'm surprised. Like, well, she's like a Twitter creature, but if it were me, I would have logged off and thrown my phone out the window or something. But yeah, so just a lot of criticism. So what was frustrating, I think, on the organizers' behalf is they might have even agreed a little bit that maybe it was inappropriate to have him there, or maybe somebody should have said something to him. I think there's mixed feelings on that. People have different perspectives. But regardless of that, the fact that this conference had so many amazing speakers, so many people met each other in person. You and I are an example. So many people connected. The detransitioners were making little friendship bracelets. And it was the sweetest thing. There were so many amazing moments from this conference. And now all anybody can think about is this one photograph of this guy in a blue dress with Laura. And it's just a shame. All that work and then all that, connection and camaraderie is just kind of being shattered.
Yeah, it does seem like it's an overemphasis of just one little slice. And I don't know about you, but I met Phil at the conference. I talked with Phil a couple of times, really found him to be a pleasant person to have a conversation with, very open. It didn't seem like a disruption. It didn't, even, there were other people who were dressed kind of funky. It just didn't strike me as a disruptive. He did not strike me as a disruptive presence at all in any way at the conference. I'm sure people have room to have all kinds of different feelings about that, though. And my opinion isn't the only one. Someone might have been uncomfortable. I'm sure that that's quite possible, but it didn't seem like it was an issue at the time. It seems like the issue has emerged afterwards from people who weren't necessarily even there and don't
know him or didn't interact with him. Yeah, I had the same experience. I mean, I'll be completely frank. I did from afar have a judgment, not that I thought he was a bad person, but just sort of like, why is he wearing these clothes? Should we be normalizing this? Is this good for
Mm,
him?
mm,
I had those thoughts. But ironically, I spent Monday, the day after the conference, I was one of the stragglers, and so was he. It was actually me, him, and Laura. We were the last three and sitting in the lobby getting, before we were catching our flights later that afternoon. So actually spent several hours just hanging out with him. And
mm,
honestly, I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. I
mm,
was actually, it tested me a little bit, to be honest.
mm,
Um, because I had that prejudgment, probably the prejudgment that that people are feeling when they see that image on Twitter. I felt that a little bit myself, but then actually after talking to him, I felt more at ease. I didn't feel like he was being creepy at all. I didn't feel like he was imposing himself on me as a woman or anything like that. It seemed like his outfit was about him and whatever his issues are, and he wasn't trying to push it on me or, live out his fetishes on me, or those are the kinds of things people are saying on Twitter. That was not his behavior. So I think that's why a lot of people are coming to his defense, the people that interacted with him. Um, if someone acted creepy or if they said weird things or, you felt that uneasiness because they were maybe got a little too close to you or like, brushed your arm and you just feel that ick. I mean, he didn't do any of that.
mm,
So, um, I'm not sure, and I don't know his whole inner, world, and have not read his book. He actually did email it to me, so
Oh,
maybe I
did
will
he?
check it
Oh,
out. Yeah.
yeah. I'm actually interested in it because it sounds like his book is auto heterosexual, and he's talking about he's I guess hypothesizing that autogynephilia and autoandrophilia are at the root of a lot of gender dysphoria.
Yeah. I mean, I think he has some insight. I think he has obviously a very different lived experience than I do. Oh
Mhm.
God, I hate that term. Why did I say lived experience?
I know. There's all these phrases that you just want to
What did I say
clear
that
your mouth
for?
after you say them. Yeah. Yeah, diversity is one of those for me. I every time I say the word, yeah.
They
Um,
ruined everything.
they
Uh,
ruined
but
it.
but yeah, I mean, I recognize that there people have a valid concern. Should we be normalizing someone wearing clothes that really aren't appropriate for the setting? Um, but also, should we be kicking one man out who paid for his ticket and was just an attendee and was there and was pleasant and didn't hurt anybody? I don't think so.
Right.
So,
And we don't have and that raises another question. I think it's kind of a slippery slope once you start to really police people's dress.
yeah,
Like, for instance, I never saw Phil in the ladies' room. I
no,
would assume that Phil uses the men's room. I even asked Phil if he I don't remember how I asked it. I think it was something about transition. He made some offhand comment like, "Yeah, well, look at me. I'm this tall, really masculine looking guy. That wasn't really an option for me." So he's like
yeah,
he's just not trying to pass as a woman. He
no.
is who he is and but he happens to be wearing what he's wearing. And I mean, he's covered. He's not it's nothing indecent. It's just women's wear, which on a man is, it's strikingly out of the norm.
And it was,
And
I mean, it's a little kind of funky because it was like a blue velvet dress. So even if a woman was wearing that outfit, it would still, people would think it was just a funky woman, but it's still a
yeah,
little off.
but I guess
But
that's where
either
the
way,
slippery slope starts. Is
whatever.
like I
Yeah.
see women dressed frequently in things that are, kind of head turning, maybe too risque, too
Hmm.
or inappropriately sexy or inappropriately revealing for a particular context, and we are in a kind of anything goes culture right now with regard to clothing. Like even at the conference we saw people in suits and very nice business attire all the way down to like shorts and really,
Sweatpants.
yeah,
Yeah.
sweatpants and jeans and so it was like it was across the spectrum in terms of casual. And so at what point do you start, how do you make a rule? And then I don't know, it's just it seems like you open up a giant can if you
Yeah.
start to tell
I
people how to
don't
dress.
think so. I don't think we should.
Mhm,
And and then the other piece I'm thinking about, because on Twitter, the big argument or the thing people were concerned about was how others were triggered. They were worried
mhm,
about trans widows who had attended and detransitioners. And my response to that is that it's people's responsibility to manage their own triggers. So I don't remember her name, but the trans widow that actually spoke at the conference, I saw that she did tweet something like,
Grace
yeah,
Shannon.
she
What's her first
said
name? Yeah.
it didn't bother her and it was fine. But
Yeah.
I think it probably did bother some other people. And I actually just talked to somebody else who said that a few of the trans people that were walking around bothered her.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't, she just said, that's my responsibility to manage. And I'm just going to stay away from them if it upsets me. I'm not expecting them to police that. And I have to be in the world with things that bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, so the fact that people on Twitter believe that GenSpect has to take care of everyone's feelings, it's like literally impossible.
Well, and it's also just woke. It's like just applying woke principles to a
Yeah,
new situation. I mean, it's the whole safetyism and
totally.
trigger, cancel culture,
Yeah.
which I
I mean,
guess
it
is
felt
what
like
really
a woke mob.
surprises me about this.
Yeah, there was a mob. It was
Yeah.
a mob. And I know people in the gender critical that there is a lot of arguments, there's a lot of infighting, but I hadn't really seen that mob behavior
Mm-hmm.
before
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in that way. So that was new. It's
Yeah.
weird to have like the mob coming from within. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's a really good way to put it. It does seem like it just was surprising coming from that direction.
Yeah. It was a shame because I think that could have been a fruitful conversation. I
Mm-hmm.
think people have feelings about it and that's respectable, but the way they were going about it, the way they were attacking, and the
Mm-hmm.
way they were going after GenSpec, like it was all their fault because a guy bought a ticket and attended their conference and they didn't kick him out. Um, I just, I don't think that's reasonable, especially with all the great things that happened that weekend. So,
Yeah. And one of the things that I think that we hear people say from time to time is go ahead and experiment with your identity. And it's the medical stuff that we're concerned about. And so here you
that's,
actually see a person who's doing exactly that
mhm.
and stopping short of medicalization and has theories and an intellectual process to share around that. And to see that be shut out was really, I guess it's just, I'm still kind of surprised by that.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but it seemed like mostly women who are upset about it. So I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's relevant, but I think they were projecting this feeling of being violated by a picture, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
being violated by his presence, being there, and that GenSpec posted the picture. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they were, I saw a lot of, well, you're platforming him.
Mm-hmm.
One tweet of one person when there were like hundreds of tweets. And I know this because I didn't take that photo, but in general, I was behind the scenes taking almost all of the photos of all the speakers and working together with the person who was tweeting to get all those tweets out. And that was a lot of work. That was,
Mm-hmm.
like thankless work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on her end, the one who was tweeting, she was all day. Really, it's a lot of
Working
work.
hard to do that.
Yeah,
And that
to
was
get it
just one of
right.
many, many, many things
Hmm.
expressed. Yeah. I think that the argument that I saw, um, that I was seeing expressed by some of the women who were responding to GenSpect was that they were more upset about the promotion of his book than
Yeah.
of the photo itself.
Did they even promote it in the tweet? I don't remember.
They did, yeah. They
Oh,
actually
okay.
referred to the fact that he had written a book, and I think that
Okay.
they said the name of it,
Okay.
and so the tweet does mention the book, and so I think
But
that
like, did they read the book? I haven't read the book, so I can't judge the book.
yeah.
Maybe the book is enlightening. Maybe it actually would give us all some insight and maybe it help us understand and help people like him so that he doesn't walk around in that blue dress and make us all uncomfortable,
Yeah.
or a lot of us uncomfortable. Right?
Well, and to sort of steelman their position, if I can, it seems like to just to play with that position, they seem to be saying that to promote acceptance of autogynephilia
Yeah.
it's a dangerous thing. It's very inappropriate, and it's threatening inherently to women, and it's promoting negative aspects of gender ideology and endorsing them.
Hmm.
And so with that comes the implication that him showing up in a dress that was an act of fetish engagement or engagement with his fetish, and that he was arousing himself by wearing that dress at that conference.
Yeah.
And yet that seems like that doesn't, I'm not sure it's quite so simple.
No, I don't think
That doesn't
so.
seem like the case to me. But what do you have any thoughts around that?
I mean, I don't know what's like in the inner workings of his mind or what he was going through. I mean, sitting next to him for like at least 3 hours in the lobby, I didn't feel like he was aroused. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't seem aroused. He was just sitting there.
Hmm.
He wasn't acting that way. I mean,
Hmm.
if he was aroused, he was hiding it really well. um, so I think this is another symptom of people making assumptions about others based on a whole group of people.
Hmm.
And I think we need to like step back a little bit and look at people more as individuals. And I think he was there honestly to meet people and maybe work through some a little bit. I don't think he wants to be this way. I think he's figuring it out,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I'm not sure, but either way, like he was there to have conversations and talk to people in an earnest way.
Hmm.
He wasn't there to impose himself, and
Hmm.
I didn't get that impression from him.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that wasn't an impression I got either. And again, it's hard to make a guess about somebody's frame of mind or what their
yeah,
intention was without having a discussion with them. And he's not here having this conversation with us.
right,
But it just, one of the accusations is this guy is playing, he's using us, he's using women to play out his fetish game.
yeah,
And I think, well, if that's the case, to some extent, every person's, the way we present ourselves, the way we dress is a form of communication always.
yeah,
It could be seen as a form of communication, some more than others. And I picture someone like Kim Kardashian, and is she using the audience to play out to as a feedback, as a mirror for herself? And again, it feels like a slippery slope if you start
hmm,
to make that determination on behalf of someone else.
yeah, I agree. Hmm.
But it's interesting. It's just been interesting to kind of watch it happen. And I'm sure that just having this conversation is going to really upset some people who I'll probably get a lot of negative feedback
Yeah,
in the comments, but I don't know. It's just, it surprises me because and again, I hate to think about sides because I named this channel the Radical Center for a reason. I don't want to
yeah,
be on a side of anything, but if there are sides, there's like the authoritarian, do as we say or we'll cancel you. And then there's the side that's like trying to oppose that, and to see
yeah,
that come out of that same process playing out on the other side of things, it's really uncomfortable for me because I'd much rather approach things with an open mind and try to avoid that kind of rigid thinking.
yeah. I mean, in a way, I mean, he's not here, but I think like James Lindsay would probably compare this a little bit to a struggle session. That like
Oh
Jen
yeah.
Specht is now going through a little struggle session. You need to apologize. You need to apologize. And I think Stella even said she admitted that it could have possibly been a mistake, but she's also not going to just flat out apologize. I think people were demanding for the photo to be taken down, and Jen Specht's not doing that. And when a mob comes at you and makes these demands, then that's a problem. Even if you
Hmm.
did make a mistake, I mean, it's the style. It's just wrong. Maybe, and
Hmm.
social media, unfortunately, is a vehicle for this kind of behavior to really be implemented.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, unless there's something that you think we missed, if you want to go ahead and we can just wrap up now,
Yeah,
and hopefully we can chat again in the future. Maybe I'd love to have a longer conversation with you
yeah,
about your perspectives on all of this, and how you got from where you were to where you are now.
I would love to do that. And yeah, we have so much to talk about just in general about the mental health field. And I have a book coming out. We'll talk about that
Oh
later.
yeah. Oh, awesome.
You can promote. Can you platform my
Do you want to?
book?
Yeah. Is it about autogynephilia?
It's not. Although there's a little section just talking about that's one thing that could be going on,
Yeah.
giving people an understanding, but it's not in depth.
Do you want
So
to say anything about your book? Give the name or where it can be found, or do you
yeah,
want to?
so
Okay.
it's called A Practical a practical guide to gender distress, tips and tools for families. So it's Stash and Stella just like came out with a book right when I was like finishing mine. I was like, oh my God, they're just like gonna be so good. Um, but mine will have something else to offer my experience. And I think mine is also for, I think theirs is for the families that really have already been in the trenches with this, have figured out that medicalization is not the right, or affirmation is not the right path. And then where do they go from there, and how do they, where do they understand? Mine's coming from, I think, a little bit further back for the families that are maybe just falling into this and just trying to figure out which way to go and how to think. I mean, I'm not telling them how to think, but I'm giving them just more information so that they can make a more informed decision about what's best for their family. So a lot of the things that I think probably everyone at the conference already knows about, how suicide is the suicide lie.
Mhm.
I talk about my experience. I wrote an essay about what I learned at a camp conference, a therapy conference, how they're basically brainwashing the therapists. And I do have some tools or some suggestions on maybe how to approach a trans kid. I put together a little like trans English dictionary, which is kind of fun. Yeah, so it has all these different sections. It quotes a lot of the detransitioners. The detransitioners have allowed me to use their art, which really expresses what they've been through. So it just gives them, that alternate, I guess, gender critical perspective on trans, just to people who really are just starting out to figure out that this might not be the right way, to give them some more facts and to make a better decision about what to do with their family.
Well, it sounds like a fantastic resource. Is it
Thank you.
already out or coming out?
No, it's coming.
Okay.
It's sitting with an editor right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm thinking I don't know, I've not done this before. I'm self-publishing, but I'm thinking it will come out probably in about 2 months or so. I actually just emailed it to the editor the day before the conference. I like gave myself that deadline. And so she's working on it now, and then we have to format it. I don't know how long it all takes. So
Mhm.
I'm hoping it would be done by Christmas, but I'm not sure. So I don't want to make that promise.
Well, that sounds excellent. And I would love to maybe have a longer conversation and ask you more about some elements of that. I'd like to hear about that camp conference and the
Oh yeah.
therapy aspect of things in detail if you want to go into that
It
at some
was
point.
crazy,
I can imagine.
insane.
I can imagine.
Joanna Olson Kennedy was one of the trainers. That one who said if you can just get your new breasts
Just
later.
get new breasts.
That
If
one,
you cut them off
she
and
was
want
the
new
trainer.
ones.
I didn't know who
Yeah.
she was at the time, and then
Gosh.
I figured it out after.
Oh.
I didn't know who I was in front of, but I remember going home and having nightmares.
Wow. Those are some
Literally,
extreme
yeah.
ideas.
It
And
was really
yeah,
extreme. It was
yeah.
really radical. Yeah,
Oh, well, that's a conversation I look forward to having.
yeah.
Unfortunately, that this has to be these have to be conversations we have, but
hmm
it's really wild what's happening in therapy.
It really is.
Well, thank you very much, Pam, for joining me today. And I'll put any links that you want to give me or to your socials and anything else in the description so people can find you
Sure.
wherever you want to be
I'll
found.
give it to you after.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.